This episode is brought to you by Cardimax. Life on the front line requires you step up your game. Owned and operated by former Navy SEAL Sean Matson, Cardimax has designed just the right supplements for you and is offering American Party an exclusive offer. Buy one, get one free in your first order. Go to cardimax.com and use the promo code American. That's cardimax.com, helping you achieve your max. So, you're not Dakota Meyer.
No.
People have noticed that already. He can't grow a beard. So, you know, whatever. We have with us today Mike Mahalski from Sons of Liberty Gunworks. That's your name, right? Did I say it right?
That's perfect.
You
Thank
should.
you.
I want to give Ross the opportunity to say it. Nobody say Mike's name when Ross gets in today, because he's the worst at pronouncing names of any human being I've ever seen. The first thing, like within the first 5 minutes of the conversation with Matthew McConaughey told him how to say his name properly, and then Ross proceeded for the next hour to say it wrong over and over and over again. Right?
Intentionally?
No, it's just dumb. That's I think the thing he struggles with the most is saying words properly. I don't know why it is. Maybe he's got AIDS or something. People are asking if you like puzzles. Dakota's really into puzzles.
Yeah. Puzzles, Sudoku, mazes.
No, I mean like puzzles, like a 1,000-piece puzzle, putting it together. Not trying to figure.
Not like a word. Not like a brain game.
Right. No.
No, I don't think I've done a puzzle in
since you were a
20
child,
years.
because
Yeah.
that's for children, right? All right. Are we all set on that? There's some assholes in the studio today, staring at me and making a bunch of noise and stuff. Julia is here. Fucking who else is here? Who else is here? Everybody get into the chat and talk shit. We're going to talk about the Second Amendment today, since you not only do you manufacture firearms, some of the most quality I've ever used personally, but you also are frequently on the front lines of this battle, both in Texas and throughout the country. A lot of stuff's going on lately.
Yeah, it's exciting actually. It seems counterintuitive because the Second Amendment is under attack constantly,
Yeah.
but more so now than it's ever been. But at the same time, though, this is a really good opportunity for us to take ground. That seems counterintuitive, but if you understand how lobbying and the theater of politics works, this is actually a good time for us to use that to our advantage. I mean, politicians are snaky folks, and if you know how to, all politicians are cons, right?
That's right.
And if you understand that, then you can use that to your advantage. And right now is a time for us to go on the offensive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you just bring stuff up randomly out of nowhere, it's hard to get movement on it. But if people in the industry or people at large are feeling attacked, then they mobilize a little more readily, I would say. And now we're starting to see some of the results of that, right? I mean,
I think if I were to propose a bill to put machine guns in vending machines right now, I bet I can find a representative to sponsor that bill, simply because it's the most anti-Biden thing ever.
Yeah.
Right? And so
that Marjorie Taylor or whatever lunatic would probably do that, let's be honest. Although, isn't it Montana where if you buy all the parts from Montana, the original parts, you can own certain machine gun, like a 30 caliber machine gun they used to make up there for World War II or some shit?
Man, see, unfortunately, it's like Texas is on the brink of passing something very similar. About 13 states have done it. It's called the Firearms Freedom Act, where weapons made in that state are not subject to NFA law if they don't ever cross the state lines. Unfortunately, it's more theater and symbolic than than there's some poor assholes, I think, in Oklahoma right now that tested that theory, and they're under indictment for owning a suppressor. And I don't think Oklahoma's going to step up and necessarily help them, even though that they passed a law. This is a question I get all the fucking time now since Texas has started pushing the suppressor bill, which is great. And I think if enough states do it, I mean, I'm all for these symbolic victories, but if it doesn't have teeth, I don't want to necessarily be the guinea pig to
for sure.
go figure that out.
I mean, this is called nullification, right? When a state passes a law that nullifies a federal law. It's essentially what the Civil War was fought over, but not that it's that serious now. But this is something that's been happening for a long time. California, Washington State led the charge on legalization of weed, right? And that was, I mean, it's still a fucking scheduled narcotic which is the dumbest
It's
shit of all time. I mean, goddamn. But there has been some pretty significant movement. One of the most common refrains from the left is the attempt to ban assault weapons, as they like to call them. I don't know what the fucking assault weapon is. I want to know what a non-assault weapon is, actually. I think that the definition of a non-assault weapon, if you ask somebody that, it would be like asking a robot a logical fallacy, and then their brain would just blow up.
Two-sided triangle.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So California federal judge just ruled that the assault weapons ban in California is unconstitutional. That means there is no chance, literally no chance at this point, that the Congress will be able to pass a bill to that effect. That, like, you can't. That kind of thing has never happened before, where a federal appeals judge rules on something, because the next step after this guy is to go to the Supreme Court, and they're going to take it up for sure.
I think at this point the Supreme Court is going to have to take it up, and you're right. I don't think anyone's ever ruled that to be unconstitutional, but the inverse is unfortunately true. I think the Second and Fourth Circuit have ruled assault weapons bans are constitutional. So now that you have conflicting circuit courts,
so now they have to rule. Yeah,
they're going to have to do something. Yep. And if you have not read,
if there's only one ruling at the lower court, by the way, for those of you who don't understand how the judicial process works, if two courts ruled the same way, or if even one court ruled the same way, the Supreme Court has the right to pass it back down to the lower court. But if it's conflicting from different courts, now you have to rule on it. And to be honest, it's going to be 6-3 probably.
I mean, that's kind of what we're expecting. Interesting. If you have not read the opinion on that, it's really well written. I mean,
California one.
Yeah, I mean he beats them over the head, and I love it. And what's really cool is that there's no mention of sporting purposes or coyote hunting or anything. I mean, he's referring to the AR-15 and these quote unquote assault rifles as defensive tools, and I mean, and that is the nature of it. And I got to tell you, his arguments are extremely compelling. And I think they're going to have a very hard time appealing that. And what I'm very happy about is if there is not an appeal to his decision or his opinion, the stay expires on July 4th.
Right.
Which would open up California. I mean, how fucking appropriate.
Yeah, we're living in a simulation.
It is. Yeah.
Like, this is definitely a sim world, unless they planned it like that, but that seems...
It's interesting. Like, I have this conversation with fellow advocates all the time. If Trump was still the president, there's no way constitutional carry would have probably passed in Texas,
probably
right?
Probably not,
because you need that theater, and you need that obstructionism, if you will, to kind of do this stuff. That's why a lot of people are concerned. I'm encouraged. Now, this pistol brace bullshit, this is going to be massively disruptive to the entire industry, and this is something that we're going to need to get fuckers on board and start making a lot of noise. There's a comment period open right now to oppose that, and some people think that stuff is futile, but we did beat back some of the worst parts of 41P. We did beat back the ban on M855 green tip. Like, we need people to go comment on that shit.
Right. So here's what the judge said for this California ruling. Like the Swiss Army knife, which is pretty fucking funny.
That's great.
The popular AR-15 rifle is a perfect combination of home defense weapon and homeland defense equipment. That's a pretty bold statement out of the gate.
Yeah.
Like, there's no equivocating. Both are good.
There's no modern sporting purposes in that, right?
Good for both home and battle. The AR-15 is the kind of versatile gun that lies at the intersection of the kinds of firearms protected under DC v. Heller, which people probably know about, US v. Miller, which is something that led to the NFA way back in the day in 1939. Yet, the state of California makes it a crime to have an AR-15 type rifle. Therefore, this court declares the California statutes to be unconstitutional. He goes on to criticize the stupid, inane, and pedantic definition of an assault rifle, both federally and in California. I mean, it's nonsense. That's been one of the chief complaints, and why nobody really takes it seriously on the right. And I think it actually delayed progress on it because people are so incredulous. Like, a handrail makes the gun more dangerous? What are you talking about? Like, that doesn't make any sense to people. Or like a bayonet lug makes it more dangerous. How? What do you remember all the mass bayonettings that have happened across the country? Like, get the fuck out of here. So I think in the early days of all this, the firebrand 2A people were like, yeah, fuck that. But everybody else is like, this is fucking stupid. What are you talking? They're not going to can't pass that. That's dumb. But they did, right? Because people didn't take it as a serious threat. Now they are. Now there's progress being made.
Well, again, I bring up this whole pistol brace situation, and this is probably the biggest. This is probably the best example of how fucked up the ATF and politics around guns are. Right. So I mean, you're talking about them arbitrarily deciding to change their mind on something that was completely legal. I mean, as of right now, right, which is going to not be legal.
Is there any data? Did they ever present data saying how many illegal uses of that weapon with a pistol brace on it have happened?
I mean, I think there was one high-profile mass shooting in, I think, Ohio, where the guy used an AR pistol. But what's funny, what's really fucking, I shouldn't say it's funny, right? But what's ironic is this guy was committed to go commit mass murder. This guy I think he killed like 20 people or something. It was something really bad. Mm-hmm. And instead of making an illegal SBR and just putting a stock on his short-barreled gun, he still managed to follow NFA law on his way to go. I mean, the irony of it. No, but yet what's funny is there's we're in like 14 countries now, right? For Sons of Liberty, we actually do some international work. The United States is the only country that really has any kind of barrel restriction law. In Italy, you can buy an SBR. If you can buy a gun barrel, in Canada, there's no such thing as a short-barreled shotgun.
Right. I mean, there's no correlation. There's no statistical correlation between the length of the barrel and the dangerousness of the weapon itself, or the fact that particular weapon is used more during crimes.
Do you know how the SBR law came to be?
No, I would love to hear this.
Okay,
it's probably going to piss me off, but
it will. It should. So, the entire NFA Act of like 1934 was a byproduct of prohibition, right? So the United States government, prohibits alcohol. It creates this, bootleg black market situation, and now there's shootouts between, whiskey runners and law enforcement and all kinds of stuff, right? So because of that, they were trying to ban handguns. The government was actually trying to ban handguns, and so they included short barrel rifles and shotguns because they figured if they were to successfully ban handguns, that people would just work around the concealability thing by sawing the barrel off of their shotgun. So they weren't able to successfully ban handguns, but they were able to restrict short barrel shotgun and rifle stuff, right? Now, of course, the prohibition thing was overturned because it was a fucking historically horrible idea, but the byproduct of that is the NFA, which has remained. Right. And the reason SBRs are technically illegal is because they were trying to ban handguns and they figured that would be the loophole. That is why fucking SBRs and short barrel shotguns are on the NFA. That's it. That's true. People can go research this, and that should piss you the fuck off.
Do you know the FCC exists because a Baptist minister in the 1930s didn't like what he was hearing on the radio? So he started calling his local congressman to complain instead of just turning off the goddamn radio, right? And now you can't say fuck on television, or you get fined $250,000. It's stupid.
That's lobbying, right? That's it. And so just for my friends on the right, let me just tell you guys, we did not, the left did not invent cancel culture. We did.
Yeah, absolutely did. I mean, this whole, I would say that the current state of politics boils down to a combination of Newt Gingrich, right? And his family first neocon bullshit, right? Yep. Because before the administration before that was H.W. Bush, and relatively calm. And before that, it was Reagan and Tip O'Neill as the Speaker of the House. They got along pretty well. Mm-hmm. They were able to pass a lot of stuff, right? Then Gingrich comes in, and he and Frank Luntz, who is a piece of shit, he's a conservative media guy. He's like a PR consultant almost, and he's the one that turned the word liberal into a bad word, right?
Yeah,
like he just associated the
redefined language. Yeah,
right. Yeah, so it wasn't before him. The phrase liberal meant classical liberal, right?
Yeah, progressive thinking in terms of
But that classical liberal,
even progressivism has become a bad progressive. Yeah. So.
But classical liberalism is pretty much what most people believe in the United States, insofar as the idea of conservatism would apply more to economics, and classical liberalism would certainly apply more to
your social issues.
Culture, yes. So, we've allowed these people to. It started there, right? And it built through the '90s, and you saw the vitriol against public figures go farther than it's ever gone before. And maybe it's a result of how unlikable they were, because who we're talking about is Hillary and Bill Clinton, right?
Right.
And there
was a major shift, I think, there in terms of civility in politics. Yeah.
Right. Like, you didn't hear Barbara Bush or Nancy Reagan getting lit up a lot, although Nancy Reagan certainly deserved it. She was a piece of shit human being. Like, she diverted so much attention away from the AIDS crisis and then started that war on drugs bullshit, which, by the way, drugs won that one. She was a huge piece of shit, but nobody really fucked with her, right? And maybe it's the result of public life becoming more public, social media, and the early 2000s coming to fruition and stuff like that, but it's just gotten worse and worse and worse.
I think, media changed dramatically too, right? I mean, like
CNN flipped sometime during the Bush administration.
The Gulf War kind of deal.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, you also saw the rise of like everything from like your shock jocks to what was that show? What was that fucking? It was like a. I mean, Geraldo's getting hit in the face with.
It was Crossfire with Tucker Carlson and who was the other fucker on Crossfire? I don't remember.
But you're 100% right. But you also saw he was the mayor of Cincinnati, and then
Jerry Springer.
Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
But you started seeing
people don't know he was the mayor of Cincinnati, and people also don't know that the reason he stopped being the mayor of Cincinnati is because he got arrested for paying for a prostitute with a personal check.
With the city check.
Yes.
I think it was a city check.
It was a.
I think so. I mean, I can get fact check on that, but yeah. But I mean, you started seeing the rise in this kind of really divisive, almost entertainment, blood sport, gladiatorial media stuff, right? And so that, I think, that started dividing the sides in a way that you no longer had to be civil. I was having this conversation last night. Like, I remember going out for beers with my buddies, 20 years ago, and you did not know who your friend voted for. You didn't, right? I mean, like, y'all would all go out.
It was kind of like people didn't. It was impolite to ask. Like asking how much money they had in the bank, or asking a cattle rancher how many cattle they had.
How many acres you got, right? Yeah, it was kind of inappropriate, but you also just didn't talk about it. You go out and y'all chase ass and drink beers, and that wasn't like a topic. Now, do you know anybody who you don't know where they stand politically? It's part of our identity now. It's our,
I mean, I think it would be it would be hard for somebody to tell who I voted for, probably. But
yes.
For the most part, I don't think it's difficult to figure it out, right? I mean,
I know who you didn't vote for. How about that?
Yeah. People wear that shit on their sleeves. I mean, I voted for Trump this time because I don't get wrapped up in all the butthurt. Like, I don't care about that. It doesn't. If somebody's coarse and stupid like that, I understand that it sucks for some people, but it doesn't suck more than the hypocrisy from the left. You know what I mean? Like, think about the issues that the left holds most dear right now: intersectionality, feminism, gay rights, gun bans, privacy, anti-war, right? This is up until a couple of years, actually up until this year with the anti-war thing, but they nominate people like Hillary Clinton, who was anti-marriage equality until 2013, right, during an election cycle, or a midterm election cycle where her hand got forced.
Right.
She voted for the Iraq War twice, the Patriot Act.
Yep.
Right. She was on the stump for the crime bill.
Oh, yeah.
So social justice is out the window, so on and so forth. She was wrong on every major issue and lost because of it. And mostly she lost because she's unlikable. Kamala Harris got booted in the first round of the DNC, right? She was the first person gone. out of the people who got up on stage because Tulsi Gabbard lit her ass up.
I was surprised. I mean, I was shocked that she was the pick at the time because she was so unliked by both sides. You know, her record as a prosecutor. I mean, if you're talking about civil rights, if you're talking about police reform, I mean, I think she would probably be the antithesis of all of that.
If you think that the crime, and most people would agree, you hear a lot of people try to play this off on the left these days, but the crime bill had an effect on this country that is going to take decades to unravel. Right?
Yeah.
And people lost their lives, they lost time in their lives because of it. And she enforced it probably the most harshly of any attorney general in the largest state, or the second largest state, right, population-wise.
When we try to unpack some of the gun issues, like the actual gun issues, right, and you start talking about crime and murder and things of that nature, it's truly a poverty issue. I mean, if you really unpack like what most murders are, I mean, can you imagine how desperate and helpless you must feel if you feel that it's reasonable to murder somebody over $20
for resources, right?
Yeah, for $20 in the till at a liquor store. Yeah. I mean, how fucked up how hopeless must you feel if that is a reasonable option to you? That's not a gun problem. That's a poverty problem.
I say on this show all the time that the only color that matters in this country is green, right?
Yeah, I get ignored when I walk into the car dealership. Look at me.
There's no better predictor of crime than poverty in all of human history. That's been we've known that as long as we've been able to speak language. We've known that. That's why Rome did what it did for its homeless population back in the day. Anyways. That presents a challenge for both sides. The left likes to ignore that fact, right? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. Because they want to take that chaos and use it and leverage it for power.
Sure, the power of the state. Yeah.
Right, and the right has at least had. They've been at least polite enough not to make it worse, I guess, but they've done nothing to stop it. I mean, and the real problem is the right has the solution to this. It's self-determinism in entrepreneurship, right?
A social Darwinism, if you will, economic Darwinism. And I mean, there's probably some merit to that level of thinking, although I don't know if that's it's probably the logically correct answer. I don't know if it is I don't know if it's the word I'm looking for. I don't know if you could actually do that. I mean, you can't just let the chips fall where they may, per se. You can't just take the rules off and let.
Yeah, but you don't do that with your children either. I mean, at some point you take your hands off the bike and let them go on their own. But at some point, there's extra wheels on the bike. There's
training wheels on the bike.
And then at some point you've got your hand on the back of the seat too. So it's not like you just throw people to the wolves. If none of us ever helped any of the rest of us, we would all be fucked. That's why society exists in the first place. So
we talk about the abuses of social welfare and things like that, and then that's but really, I mean, if you really want to get to it, man, it's like I don't know if it's a right or left issue as much as it is like you have centralized power structures and giant corporate and banking institutions. These are clubs that they're not going to let you in, man.
Yeah,
it's a very exclusive club.
George Carlin used to say exactly that. He's like, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the case. It's not the fucking rural coal miner and the fucking 19-year-old in fucking South Central are facing the exact same thing in that regard. Now,
but it's not even your millionaire, though, if you think about it, right? I mean, like, if you really were to look at how this shit works, I mean, you could be a millionaire, but something tells me you're probably not getting a Christmas card from whoever the sitting president is that fucking year, right? I mean, you're talking about billionaires in global type of fucking structures and stuff. And if you're not in that club, I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the big club, and it's gotten worse because of Mitt Romney specifically. That Citizens United horseshit. Corporations are people. No, they're not. I want to hear all these Republicans that agreed with him that corporations were people back in the day. I want to hear what they have to say now about Facebook,
Google,
and
Twitter.
Google and Twitter. Please tell me.
Yeah.
CNN. Is that a fucking a person? Is the Washington Post a person? Like, give me a fucking break, man.
I mean, I'm very pro capitalist. I think it's the best thing, but there are some paradoxical problems with capitalism that our grandparents' capitalism bred competition, and that competition was the checks and balances, right? I mean, if you ran competing hardware stores across the street, you had to do right by people in order, or your competition would beat you, right?
You have to beat them in one of the three ways. Either you run your business more ethically, whatever that means, giving back to the community more, or you have to have lower prices, or you have to have a better product. It has to be one of those three things.
Exactly.
Right?
And the paradoxical nature of capitalism is that you have like these massive conglomerates that end up, there is no more competition, right? If you go down the aisle at the store and there's 500 choices for cereal, it's all owned by fucking Nabisco or whatever, right? I mean, so like there's this illusion of competition, but it's not. And that is the issue at the very top. That's why we have antitrust laws and stuff in this country. And again, I mean, it's a good question. I'd love to ask conservatives who backed Romney on that, like how they feel about fucking Google.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. I mean, but that's so. It is paradoxical in a lot of ways. I always say that the private citizen and the private entrepreneur should be doing everything they can to box government out, right? So one of the analogies I use is if you and your siblings, younger siblings, are hanging out playing around or whatever, right? And you as the oldest, as the most responsible, have a responsibility, I would say, to keep that under wraps. Like keep it safe, under control, whatever the rules are. Make sure that the rules are being followed and that people are getting taken care of. Because if dad has to show up, that's going to be a bad day for everybody, right? You don't want that to happen, because once he shows up, then all bets are off. So it's the same way with the government, and not only because you have to apply the same rule to everybody like that, and it doesn't always work that way. Like the minimum wage. $15 in Oklahoma City and LA, like that doesn't make sense, right?
No.
Two different economies. Anyways, there's the added problem that the government's fucking incompetent and power hungry, right? So now there's profit motive introduced into this social thing, and we're seeing it. The profit motive is we're spending so much money in taxes.
Oh, it's insane.
I would love to see some kind of number about what percentage of our taxes actually get used in an efficient way. I would say it's probably 20%, maybe.
It's worse than the Wounded Warrior Foundation.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to imagine it. I mean, if you, I looked at the math on this, because I'm having to pay a lot more taxes in the last couple of years than I ever have my whole life, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
no shit.
And I'm looking at this stuff, and I mean, you're talking about 60 cents on the dollar of every dollar you will ever generate is going to taxes. And I'm not just talking about income tax. I'm saying the tax you pay on gas, on services, on property tax. I mean, the fact that you can never truly own anything, right? You can pay your mortgage off, and somebody can still come take your fucking house.
Yeah.
and that property tax goes up every year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. So I think my philosophy is basically that private citizens and private institutions, whether they be charities, churches, businesses, whatever it is, have to step in and box the government out. So if people need help getting back on their feet or getting training, that should be fucking Walmart. Walmart should go to these people and fucking get them the training they need and help them find a job or whatever. It doesn't have to be Walmart. I'm just saying some company or some person needs to take care of that shit, because if you let the government do it, it's going to be inefficient, incompetent. There's going to be a profit motive. Somebody's getting paid somewhere, right?
Dude,
and it's not going to work. It creates, that welfare system has created generational poverty now. Instead of giving people upward mobility, now there are people who are in generational poverty. And if their grandparents were poor and their parents were poor and now they think they're going to be poor their whole life, they're going to do whatever they can to not be poor, whether it's violent or not. Sure. You know what I mean? That's just the way it works.
Yeah, and you're kind of hitting on, I think, what's one of the greatest rackets of all fucking time. And you're talking about training and applicable skills to make a more qualified workforce or something, right? dude, look at higher education, right? So if you're 18, you can't go get $100,000 small business loan, right? But you can go get your $100,000 to fund your interpretive dance degree.
Yeah.
And so there's like this cultural thing that looks down on welders and plumbers and truck drivers and fucking, whatever. And dude, the guys that I know that are welders and machinists, and that, dude, these guys are making 6 figures a year.
Yeah.
The friends that I know that have, a bachelor's degree in some bullshit fucking subject, they're sitting in a cubicle somewhere, dude, pulling down 40.
Yeah.
And, up to their fucking eyeballs in student debt. Now, I cannot think of anything that has gone up in price and down in value more than the fucking price of a college education,
right?
Which is backed by the government, right? You cannot default on that fucking loan. And so banks are cool to lend it to you because they'll just pull it out of your check for the rest of your fucking life. I mean, that's a major problem. And then, they're talking about the student loan forgiveness shit. Well, like, who does that really benefit? I mean, does that benefit your inner city kid that, that they have like a 30% graduation rate or something in some of these counties? Does that benefit them? Probably not.
I always ask what people mean when they say student loan forgiveness. If it's the federal government using tax dollars to pay off those loans, you can suck my dick. But if it's telling the universities and the banks that they can go fuck themselves for gouging these kids, I'm all for that. Fuck them. I mean, nobody went to jail for the housing crisis. Nobody's going to jail for the current student loan crisis. They never will. It doesn't make sense to me. All these predatory assholes. The only person major that has gone to jail for like wide systemic predatory shit is that guy who inflated the cost of the AIDS drug, right? He got lit the fuck up. Yeah, Spirelli, yeah.
Oh.
But otherwise, the housing crisis people, nobody went to jail.
No.
Right? The student loan shit, I promise you, no one would go to jail for that.
I don't see why they can't cap at the institution some of these tuition costs. Now, granted, look, dude, I barely graduated fucking high school and I did not go to college, so perhaps I'm not qualified to speak on this particular topic, but I mean, like the 12th generation or the 300th edition of your geometry textbook, which geometry hasn't changed much since fucking Pythagoras, dude. I mean, like, why do you need, the 300th edition that, a textbook that's virtually great? I mean, again, I don't understand. I've never seen something where there's nothing that I can think of that has gone up in price and down in value as much as a college education. And then, and then there's like this societal, like, if you watch a sitcom and they portray a plumber, it's always some fat guy with his ass crack hanging out and stuff, right? It's not a dude who, is making good money and supporting his family and doesn't owe anybody shit. That'd be a cool sitcom.
Yeah. Instead of having Kevin James play the guy, have somebody that's not a fat retard. But I mean, Kevin James is rich for playing a fat retard, so maybe I'm the retard.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's all about media narrative. Bezos owns the Washington Post.
Sure. Yeah.
Like a major corporation that sells goods and also controls the vast majority of digital data transfer in this country owns a media company. One of the biggest media companies in the world, actually.
How much did his net worth go up during COVID?
We lost half of it right at the beginning, and then doubled his net worth again, and he surpassed that. So he made back, I think, $100 billion since the beginning of COVID, including $100 billion net, even though he lost about $70 billion to his ex.
Sure, well, divorce, but I'm saying in terms of his earnings, right? So, but all of these tech guys, made astronomical amounts of money, which I'm not against making money, but I always try to look at the true cause of stuff, right? So if you're manipulating the narrative and if you're manipulating information, okay, is that because you're ideological, or is that because you're benefiting in some other way? And I don't think that these guys are ideological. I think what it is they're breeding the perfect petri dish for consumerism, right? So what was the point of like calling out or giving people hope during COVID, right? If you own the Washington Post, why would you want to have a hopeful or a victorious message? Okay, we're going to beat this fucking thing. Like, hey, you know what? You have a 99.99% of chance of survival. Yeah. Why would you want to push that narrative whenever you could just scare the fuck out of people? They stay home and order shit off the internet to their fucking door.
Right.
Now, you don't have to go very far to look, say, who benefited the most from COVID? Well, I mean, dude, if
Amazon.
If you made $100 billion fucking dollars for your own pocket, I'd say
Amazon,
that,
in a typical year, Amazon sales and delivery services will come close to breaking even or be somewhere north or south of black, right? I mean, they'd be somewhere.
I think they operate like on a 1 or 2% margin. It's something very, very thin.
But AWS, Amazon Web Services, their data center makes, I think, 80% of their revenue.
Sure.
And it's the fucking ROI on that. Or, I'm sorry, the profit on that.
The margins are astronomical.
Yeah. So they don't really give a shit about that. Now this year they also started making money on the shipping because it was so much of it. You know what I mean? Everybody was buying everything from there. There were also market shortages where people were fucking selling shit at like double prices. They had to shut some down, actually. People were selling pallets of toilet paper for like 65 times more than what they should cost or some shit like that.
This is one of those topics that fucking... So the talking heads always bring up like the greed of the gun industry, right? Oh,
the greed of the gun industry.
The greed of the gun industry. And they talk about, you know, that we have blood money.
There's too much competition to be greedy.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the gun industry is still your last bastion of like our grandparents' capitalism. I mean, it's small companies.
Well, that
right?
And drugs.
Like
drug dealers are pretty capitalist.
Yeah,
you have to operate within the market. Your product has to be good, or you better fucking sell it cheap.
Yeah, but what's funny though is if you were to add up like I don't know a single person on the Forbes 400 that made their wealth from guns. Okay.
No.
There's not a single. And if you look at like one of the biggest gun companies that I'm aware of is like Ruger, which is a publicly traded company. If you look at their market cap, it's, you know, go compare that to, I don't know, fucking Exxon or Facebook or Amazon. And you realize that like the whole myth of the greed of the gun industry is bullshit. I mean, Jeff Bezos has more personal wealth, like actually net wealth in his own personal pocket than the entire gun industry probably generates gross in, you know. So again,
probably, yeah.
No, I mean, this is true. You're never going to really hear a scandal about like Senator so-and-so misusing Sons of Liberty's private jet. Like that's not going to be a story you're ever going to hear, right? But you can in a lot of other industries.
I mean, it's so... There's no physical product you can sell that's going to make you richer than data.
No.
At this point. Like you're never even going to be close. Elon Musk didn't get rich selling electric cars or going to fucking space and getting government contracts. He got rich from PayPal, taking percentages off transactions. Same thing with Palantir guy. What's his fucking name? Fuck.
Fucking PayPal. Did I tell you what happened with me with PayPal? So...
Yeah, I think, you did. Tell the audience. So.
Yeah, so fucking one day out of the blue, I get
Peter Thiel, that's what I was thinking of.
Thiel. So fucking out of the blue one day, I get an email from PayPal that that they no longer wish to do business with me. The next day, my girlfriend got the same message because we have the same address. And then like the day after that, my mom got the same message.
Your mom?
Yeah, my mom, because I think we have like the same last name or something. The point is, though, is that nobody in my household, or certainly not my mom, has ever taken a PayPal transaction for anything gun related. And just and for the record, right now, like I don't send invoices to Brownells or something through fucking PayPal.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like
no
that's
shit.
not like I don't run my business. I've used PayPal for like, you know, if I'm going to pitch in for the fucking fishing trip or something, right?
Right. Like but person to person transfers typically.
Right, but simply my affiliation with the gun industry, my girlfriend's affiliation with me, and my mom's affiliation, like that's that fuck PayPal. I mean, fuck PayPal, dude. You know?
Yeah, PayPal is. I mean, it's not just them though. You know Xander, right? Mm-hmm. He got booted off Cash App.
Oh yeah, well Venmo's owned by PayPal.
Yeah,
I got booted up, but at the same time,
Cash App, and he doesn't do anything. He doesn't buy. He owns a couple of guns, but he got them from friends. I don't think he's bought anything weird ever.
No, I mean,
but the only thing he does is post a lot of conspiratorial shit on the internet, and that makes you wonder if somehow they're going back and associating these accounts. I mean, I don't know how else that would work. Like, how else would you accomplish it? How else would they know what's going on unless they were fucking actively taking data from the social media companies and applying it to their fucking products. I can't think of any other way that would even happen.
Yeah. So I've recently had this conversation. I used to think that it was anti-gun. My beliefs on that are starting to adjust a little bit. I don't think it's so much anti-gun as much as it is like anti-counter narrative. Okay. I don't think they hate guns. I think they hate you. Okay. And what's going to be interesting is when the demographics come out of how much the demographics of gun ownership is changing. Yeah. They might have to adjust how they look at guns. But at the end of the day,
it'll be funny if criticizing a gun owner at some point becomes racist.
We're almost there. We're almost there, dude.
That'll be because my understanding is the next census that comes out, gun representation in the black community is going to be higher than their representation in the population.
Yes.
For the first time ever.
Yes.
Right. I think Latinos are still behind. But
they're catching up,
and
black
people are fucking way ahead now.
So are women. So are the LGBT community. Like the demographics of gun ownership are completely different. I don't know if it's necessarily because, like, again, I don't know if they hate guns or if they just fucking hate the fact that people who typically historically have liked guns have been counter narrative. But that's going to fucking change.
Yeah. I mean, it's people have adopted this binary politics. It's like in government, we switched to something called bluff, bottom line up front. Yeah. Right? It's a 3-sentence paragraph explaining what the fuck you're talking about, and then you go into detail afterwards.
Right.
Because people can only handle so much information.
Easily digestible, stupid fucking sound bites. Yes.
And while that is accurate and can be very useful, right, to make sure, I mean, it's supposed to be like the cover of a book where you read it and you're like, okay, this is information I need. Now I'm going to go study more. People just stuck with the infographic and moved on with their lives and made their own assumptions and then started to believe that their assumptions about the facts were the facts themselves.
Yes.
That is insane. That's the way a fucking idiot operates, and that's the way most people are operating, unfortunately.
On both sides.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's on the right, it's God, gays, and guns, right, forever. Not so much with the gay stuff anymore, but God and guns is still a pretty big thing.
Sure.
The God thing's kind of going away, but the guns thing is a big, and that'll stay big. But then it's abortion, then it's social justice, choice, and whatever the fuck else on the left, anti-gun, I guess, and
the actual issues are
people want to know what team they're playing for. I think it's confusing for people to have to go look at each thing individually. I think it's a problem for some of these folks to do that, and they're unwilling or incapable of doing it.
There's no fucking nuance. I blame social media for a lot of that because you have to be able to pack your entire worldview into how many characters on Twitter, right? And I mean, and then not just that, the way our current media works too. Like, I always love watching, Fox or something. And it's like, well, Senator, we have 30 seconds left. Can you tell us your plans with China? Like,
seriously,
30 fucking seconds.
Like the debates.
Yeah, 1 minute. You have 1 minute to unpack your fucking plan, dude.
They should all be
long form,
untimed, fucking conversational style, and not question answer. The only reason they're question answer is because the media wants to control that narrative.
Exactly.
If the next presidential election, whomever the two candidates left over should go to YouTube and be like, hey, we're not having a moderator. We're going to fucking do a 4-hour conversation.
Yeah,
because or we're both going to go on Joe Rogan at the same time and just have a 3-hour conversation about whatever. That would have been, you can learn what somebody actually believes.
Yeah, that would have been fucking awesome. Like, I mean, I really, dude, I'm not a fan of Bernie Sanders. Okay, I fundamentally disagree with the guy a lot. But I mean, that interview on Rogan with Sanders is interesting. You walk away from it realizing that he's
not a bad man.
He's not a bad human being.
Naive.
He's naive. Yeah. He's highly idealistic, dude. I mean, unrealistic. But I don't think he's a fucking evil man. And honestly, if anything, you could say that guy is consistent.
He's consistent for sure, and he's also, in his mind, he sees people suffering, and he's trying to figure out a way to stop it.
Sure.
And that is a very good instinct to have, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that it's kind of like the Ron and Rand Paul guys, how they have this, what would be considered, I guess, back in the day, a fringe ideology. And because it was rejected outright without any nuance, people adopted it because some people are contrarians, some people actually believe it, whatever, right? Libertarian economics, it's stupid, right? It doesn't make any sense. If you want that, move to fucking Somalia, because that's where you can find it.
Here's the fucking problem, dude. I mean, one of the many problems, but there's like these weird impossible purity tests that people put on either politicians or public figures, there's like this weird impossible purity that if you deviate in any way from whatever this purity test is, then then you're their fucking sworn enemy, right?
Yeah.
For those of us that actually work in politics, in lobbying, in trying to get shit done, dude, you've come to us. You come to us very simple truth, and that there are no friends in politics. All there are common enemies, right? If AOC for some fucking reason woke up tomorrow and decided that she wanted to abolish the fucking ATF, I would march shoulder to shoulder with her for that one fucking cause. Not because I like her, but because all you have in politics are common fucking enemies.
Yeah.
But people don't get that. You're talking to like the spectators in the arena.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, for sure. I mean, think about it this way. You had a group of friends. Some of them are baseball fans. Some of them aren't. Or some of them are fans of different teams. And I'm a fan of the Braves. They're a fan of the fucking Phillies. Like, fake Dan over here, that piece of shit. Like, I'll go to the game with him, but we're not going to root for the same thing, right?
No.
But that doesn't. Why would that interrupt our relationship? Like, we're both trying to create the best possible world for ourselves, our family, and then expanding out in concentric rings after that. If you have that intent, then we should be able to have a conversation. The problem is that people don't believe each other have that intent anymore, because Frank Luntz and Newt Gingrich spent all the early 90s demonizing the word liberal, and then in retaliation, conservatives or the liberals went hard after, like, alt-right became a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but what does that even fucking mean?
I have no idea. Well, it started with the Tea Party probably in the 2009 time period.
But alt-right has become this almost
it's a catch-all for anybody that the left doesn't agree with.
It's a catch-all for anybody. Yeah, I mean, and in the way that it's spun in the media is that it's like it's a violent type of movement or faction or something. But you can, it's kind of, you can assign that term to whoever you don't like. But so it has no more meaning.
Right.
Alt-right doesn't mean shit to me. Liberal doesn't mean shit to me. These titles, these capsule things. Yeah. That the world doesn't work like that.
No, it's but that's the crux of intersectionality, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it's
divide and conquer, dude.
Well, we've decided that. Well, not we, but these motherfuckers have decided that they're gonna break everybody down into their own individual parts, and then rank those parts on how offended that person should be based on that part. And I guess you get like a quality score at the end, or when's above replacement. I don't know what the number is exactly, but it's just another type of caste system. It's a social caste system instead of an economic one. Like, you, as a straight white dude in the South with a beard that owns guns, you're not really entitled to speak on social issues, according to this premise.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's nonsense, because it's to truly solve issues, experience counts, no question, and perspective counts as well. But we have to have an idea meritocracy where the best idea wins. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Sure.
I mean, if you reject an idea outright because of the author, then you're a fucking idiot. And that's what happened with Trump. Trump had a good hold on a lot of shit. The economy was really good, particularly for black and brown people, but good for everybody for the most part. Gas was low. We were dominating the trade war with China at the time.
Yes.
Despite, the left's best effort to fuck that up.
Sure.
Immigration was finally getting under control.
Yes.
5 major peace deals in the last 6 months of administration between Middle Eastern countries and Israel for the first time in the history of Israel.
Yeah.
Right?
48, 49, what is it?
48, yeah.
48, yeah.
And because he was mean, or because the narrative was, because the goal was to win the election and not necessarily to make the country better, you have to make that man seem as evil as possible. So you take everything he says and turn it into something evil, regardless of if it is or not. There's nothing objective about that. And if you're not being objective, and if you're trying to win the election instead of make the country better, then you're not a patriot. You're an asshole.
Kids in cages was the smoking gun, was the evidence of Trump's evilness and ethnocentrism and racism, and white nationalism. There are fucking more kids in cages right now than there have ever been anywhere. And those fucking cages were built by Obama. Yeah. Okay. What the mental gymnastics that somebody would have to do to somehow, use that as the very evidence of Trump's evilness, and then somehow ignore it completely under a different president. I mean, like the mental gymnastics you'd have to do to be able to say that with a straight fucking face.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a level of intellectual dishonesty there that I just can't forgive. I can't forgive you.
For a while, I try still to give people the benefit of the doubt, but it goes beyond cognitive dissonance at that point. Like, you're willfully doing it at that point. That's no longer cognitive dissonance. It's not your brain tricking you. You're being dishonest.
You're being
yourself.
dishonest.
Yes.
You're being irresponsible and dishonest. And I mean, but
I don't know if you've seen the shows that two of the last 3 shows that I did here for American Party. One was to describe MVM Inc., right? Which is this, it's the company that is taking kids from CBP. So CBP gets these illegal immigrant kids that come across the border by themselves. They hand them over to COVID testing facilities, and then they don't get to see them anymore. They don't issue them NTAs to come back to court or anything like that. They go to this company, MVM Inc., and some other companies like them, and then get shipped randomly throughout the country, right?
That's
everywhere.
Insane.
To alleged family members, although my CBP contacts tell me that they can't find their family members, or that the parents will get on the phone and say, we can't come and get you because we'll be deported if we do. And they just leave their kids in the system, right?
That's insane.
And then the kids go to facilities that are operated by a company called Southwest Key Program. And they have detention facilities all over the Southwest.
We have one in San Antonio. Did you hear about the scandal in San Antonio?
I know about all of it.
Dude, that's if some of the listeners have not heard about that, we have the Alamo Dome, or this huge sports arena in San Antonio. It's been converted to a migrant holding facility with children, and there was a ton of credible, real accusations. I shouldn't even say accusations. I mean, there were reports
of abuse,
of
like rampant abuse,
child abuse, child rape. Right, the governor Abbott went down there with some Texas Rangers. Told him to fuck off, dude. They would not let law enforcement in there to investigate these very credible claims, dude. That is. They're
operating as a de facto embassy.
Yes.
So
they're sovereign. Yeah.
Even CBP federal agents have tried to go to these places, and they've been told to go away. And then their leadership has told them to stay away from those places. Like the one in Brownsville used to be a Walmart. It was purchased and turned into, and it's way worse than the cages.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
that they were in, that we saw the pictures of.
No one was getting raped in the cages, dude. They're getting raped in these fucking facilities. And this is real. This is not bullshit.
Yeah. And then there's there's the added part where specifically Southwest Key Programs is setting up shell companies, right? The shell company is a for-profit company that services the nonprofit that's federally funded. And they're making somewhere between 250 and 600 million a year in revenue, depending on what year it is and what's going on right this year. They'll probably make $1 billion, to be honest, because of how heavy the traffic is. But they set up for-profit companies to service the nonprofit. Now that's tax dollars. No. And they own the for-profit companies. The board members of the nonprofit own the for-profit companies. They loan money from the nonprofit to the for-profit companies to buy real estate, get the money back with interest, and then they rent those properties from the for-profit for 5 to 10 times what they're worth market value. Just funneling money out to the cell. So not only are they creating the circumstance, well, they're subverting U.S. law, federal law. They are creating a circumstance where kids are being raped. There's a case in Phoenix, this guy with AIDS raped 7 teenage boys, right?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So that, and then they're also funneling money. Like, it's the trifecta of shitbag human being right there. And it's happening on, like, 0.6 miles from here. They have a headquarters.
Yeah, it's happening in San Antonio,
all over,
and in all of a sudden that story just fucking evaporated. It was in the news cycle for a little bit.
It was in the news in 2018. The New York Times did a story on Southwest Key and about all the abuse scandals and all this shit because they were trying to pin it on Trump. And once it was discovered that the program started under Obama, and then Trump was out of office and Biden took over, nothing. Right? They're done talking about it. Kids are getting raped. People are scamming money off of the government, billions of dollars off of the government, and it doesn't matter because they're not on the other side.
Yeah, that's the fucking.
You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, like nothing happens if you can't generate outrage. You can't generate prosecutions or results of any kind, right? So you have to suppress the outrage. And the only way to do that is because I think most reasonable people, regardless of party, would be fucking outraged at child rape. But if you suppress the information, and if if you don't know about it, then you can't call for fucking heads.
I don't know if that's true, to be honest. I mean, look at the different ways people talk about Biden, who's got a weird, creepy thing with kids, it seems.
It's pretty fucking creepy, dude. Yeah.
Or when they found out that Bill Gates' name was on all the flight logs versus when they found out Trump's name was on the flight logs. Trump was like, oh, he's probably up to something. Bill Gates, he's fucking Bill Gates.
Was Trump ever actually on the flight log?
I have no idea.
No,
I think so.
Trump was never. Trump knew Epstein from Key Largo, whatever his resort is. Mar-a-Lago, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, like it's pretty documented that they had a falling out, and Epstein was banned from the resort. But yeah, 22 fucking flights from Bill Clinton, and like nobody has once questioned the
way people talk
going on there.
The way people talk about Trump's relationship, whatever it was with Epstein versus what Clinton's relationship was, which Clinton was clearly not only friends with him longer, but much closer and traveled with him frequently, right?
Yeah, well, 22 fucking flights on this plane.
So you're telling me that, or your premise was that child rape should be enough to break down the party barrier. It's not. Clearly, it's not. We see that it's not. Even when it's. I mean, look. How many people are clamoring for the Catholic Church to either start paying taxes or get the fuck out of our country? You know what I mean? After they've systemically raped children for 70 years in this country at a minimum that we have evidence for, right? And not only that, but the guy who was not this pope, but the previous pope, Benedict, he was the guy that was in charge of, in the United States, moving all these motherfuckers around to avoid prosecution. Then he got voted in as pope. So the organization has demonstrated its commitment to itself and no one else, including children, by the way.
Yeah.
And somehow we still consider that a tax-exempt organization. By the way, these border Catholic churches are giving money to coyotes to get people over the border.
Yeah,
like we've already demonstrated.
Yeah,
that.
that's not even disputed.
And it's not even new, actually. It's been going on since the 70s.
Well, it's been going on since like the 40s, right? Wasn't it the Odessa Project? Didn't they help smuggle like Nazi war criminals into South America?
It's being into the U.S. specifically, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Perhaps you're right. I mean, when it comes to the outrage defined by political lines, I think what it comes down to is just we're so tribalized and we're so entrenched in these fucking camps that your camp can do no wrong and their camp can do no right. And man, you would think that something like child rape would be outside of politics.
You'd think so, right? I mean, for me, that's the hard line. That's the well, I was on Alex Jones' show and he said something. I mean, I didn't think of this before, but he said so these people have crossed the Rubicon, right? A reference to Caesar, and the 13th Legion crossed the Rubicon to the border of Rome, which was unheard of, right? You didn't bring your legions home; you left them in Gaul or whatever the fuck. But yeah, it absolutely is. That's got to be the red line for everybody.
Oh, you know, fucking hope so. Jesus Christ!
If there's one thing that people can agree with, it must be that. And if you don't get on board with that, or if you're complicit in those actions, or if you're turning a blind eye to that shit,
you're complicit, dude. You're
fuck you.
Yeah.
Like you've run out of support for me. Entirely. So it's the situation is getting dire at this point because the powers that be seem to be capable of influencing media in a way that they weren't able to before. I mean, the government and media have always been in bed together, and political parties have had. I tell this story all the time on the show. I won't get into it here, but the Associated Press and Western Union helped Rutherford B. Hayes overturn an election, right, to keep Jim Crow in the South, to get federal troops out of the South. So it's nothing new, but it's reached a level now where the only news people can get, and they get inundated with it 24 hours a day, comes from this machine right here. And there's a couple of companies that have a hard left bias that are running them.
Yeah.
So it's become a problem now. Right?
But you don't think that there's a legitimate transformation going on into how people seek information. I mean, like the rise of long form podcasts, the rise of people with different viewpoints having, creating a voice of some kind. Sure, I believe that the mainstream media still has a fucking death grip on narrative, but you are seeing, I think, the trend moving in the right direction. I mean, I would imagine that CNN is losing power and independent voices are gaining power. Now, the power structure is still very lopsided, but I mean, don't you think it's going in the right direction?
It seems to be. We'll see what the result is, right? I mean, certainly long-form conversation in independent media like, what's his name? Sagar? I don't know how you say his name. Giorgio would know. But yeah, there's a lot more independent media out there now, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
Cable news is falling off the face of the earth. CNN's ratings are the worst they've ever been in their history.
Well, they've lost all credibility. If Trump did anything, I think it was cast a lot of fucking doubt on the information. And it's on both sides, man. If I see an article of any kind, I go, and if it's important enough to me, like to want to have an understanding of the topic, I go seek out as many sources for that one topic as I possibly can, because I just don't trust any of the sources, right? But I mean, I don't think I'm a unique snowflake in that regard. I think most people have become suspicious of what they're being fucking fed.
For sure. I mean, people are, but again, they're applying the same standard to that. Is it from a trusted source that I consider a trusted? Is it from MSNBC or CNN? Then I don't believe it. Is it from Fox News? Then I don't believe it, right? People still think like that. And then I think there's a growing percentage of the population that doesn't trust anything that anybody says, which is,
yeah,
that is.
Well, that's equally dangerous.
I mean, really dangerous.
Yeah, yes. I like, dude. There needs to be a healthy level of skepticism, but then you start seeing some topics to where, oh man, that's a red flag, or hey, that's a conspiracy. Like, I mean, I'll give you a quick example, and I'm not going to go too far into this, but it's really fucking fascinating to me, like all of the information and like the stuff coming about, like these UFO sightings and stuff, right? Well, it's really disappointing how just naturally just uninterested a lot of people are in this, and they dismiss it immediately as like, well, this is going to be a project for government control. And I'll only bring up this topic in that you learn a lot about people and how they view this. I mean, there's not like an interesting curiosity to it. It's either dismissive or it's conspiratorial or it's whatever. And so I think
there's a lot of different camps. Some people think that it's a distraction by the government, right?
Yeah, a hell of a distraction, right?
Well, yeah, it certainly would be. So a lot of people believe. Well, a lot of religious people don't want that to be a thing. I think their worldview would be challenged to a degree that they would not be able to mentally deal with if we've discovered life elsewhere.
The whole question of a deity and the structure
is there like a fucking Alpha Centauri Jesus as well, right? I mean, that'd
be the first question, right?
Yeah, of course it would, and it's actually a really fucking interesting question, to be honest. But there's a lot going on there, but it's people do seem unaffected by that. But now,
I mean, you would think that this would be like a major, but
that actually supports a theory I have. I have had this theory that the government discovered alien life a long time ago, and they've been using film and television to desensitize people to that. And when we see this stuff in real life, it's going to look exactly what we've seen on screen all these years, and we're not going to be shocked or surprised by it. I think that's not an unsmart idea either.
No, it's probably the way you ease somebody into
I don't like being manipulated, but people are fucking stupid, so it's not the worst idea that I've ever heard.
But going back to like how we got off on this topic, man, you have people who don't believe anything and are so kind of closed off to any type of information, and they're so entrenched in their own camp, whatever camp that is, that they will reject any information on any topic that does not fit a very narrow band of whatever your narrative is. That is equally that is as concerning as simply drinking from the fucking fire hose of whatever camp you're in. I mean, like that's the inverse, but it's equally bad.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of bad, before we're getting towards the end here. Before we go, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
This is a tough question, so I hope you brought your thinking pants. We collect quite a bit of data on gun violence in this country. It's manipulated in ways that make no sense. Like 67% is suicide, right?
Sure.
So this whole, there's 33,000 murders a year. And I go, nope.
No.
There's not. It's like 11. It's a lot, I guess. I mean, 11,000 people, that's tragic, but 11,000 out of 340 million is not a lot. You know what I mean? I mean, that's pretty under control, as it were. But anyways, we collect a lot of data. There have been a lot more psychological studies done, and it's brought a lot of people into this conversation on red flag laws, right? Okay. Now, I know where I stand on it, but I do think it's a lot more nuanced than people like to say, because they're afraid of the implications of it, and they should be, by the way. Red flag laws cannot happen because you can't trust the government, right? You can never give them that power, even if it makes sense. So what we're talking about right now is just in theory. I don't want anybody to get freaked out. We don't give. There's no. I know what your answer is going to be.
No, but, you might not. So
well, what is the? Here's my question. What is the responsibility of public safety officials if they have information that seems to suggest some circumstance or some type of person or some mental state or some series of events leads to statistically inevitable violence?
Okay.
Like, what is our responsibility collectively as the public to deal with that?
That's a fantastic question, and I would ask, let me respond to that completely, though, because I don't want to be misinterpreted here, because it's such a sensitive topic, and I want to make sure that I'm in.
And it should be too, right? I mean,
it really is.
As much as gun laws get encroached upon, like, you have to be real specific about what you're fucking saying there.
Yeah, and I want to be clear on this, because it's one of those. I mean, just those words alone, red flag is a huge trigger, and I want to be clear on this, so I don't want to be misinterpreted. Our side, meaning the gun advocacy side, has always blamed mental health as the issue and not the gun. That is all.
That's because 67% of the gun homicides are suicide.
Yeah, no, but
and then some large percentage of it is also people that have actual mental health problems, right?
Right, but like the stuff.
So it's a good narrative, is what I'm saying. It makes sense.
It does make
supports that.
It does make sense, because if the incidences that get people talking and that make it to the news cycle are usually like these high profile shootings, where some asshole goes into a place and shoots it up. That's the stuff that generates the most debate on the gun topic. Okay, it's not the inner city violence, and it's not the poverty. It's all the stuff we ignore, right? It's some asshole walking into a mall. Okay, so somebody who would be compelled to do that is clearly fucking mentally unwell. And if you go and if you research every single one of these high profile incidences, okay, if you talk to the family members, the classmates, the fucking roommates, the ex-girlfriends of every mass shooter that I can think of in modern history, and I tracked this shit, okay, nobody was exactly fucking shocked that little Billy went off the fucking farm.
Yeah.
Okay. And what you see a lot of times is that there were multiple opportunities to intervene, okay, in this thing. All right. Somebody fucking, they had multiple contacts with, law enforcement. They had multiple contacts with like their school counselors, social workers. Right? Yeah. Sure. Okay. And so then our side always says, well, why didn't somebody intervene? Well, you can't have pre-crime, right? You can't go in there and start depriving somebody of their
even
rights.
after the crime, there's the presumption of innocence.
There's a presumption of innocence.
So you certainly can't. Yeah, pre-crime that can never happen, because even if it was effective, it would immediately become weaponized by whomever was in power. That's why the government can't have these capabilities, because somebody will weaponize it. You don't make the Patriot Act, for example, may have made sense at the time, but somebody comes into office that's not going to fucking use that in the way it was intended to be used, that's it.
Yeah,
like society's over.
I'm gonna make this very clear. Like, I am 1,000% opposed to red flag laws.
Right, same.
Okay, in pretty much any capacity at all, because there is going to be a big problem with due process. Okay, and you can't have pre-crime. You cannot preemptively deprive somebody of rights because they have a high probability of committing a crime. Okay, you cannot do that. we do see that there have been opportunities to intervene in some way, but the problem with red flag laws is that the government intervention is always a fucking sledgehammer. It's never a scalpel.
Right.
Okay. And so what I've thought about many times is like, what if the intervention wasn't so much, going in and depriving somebody's rights? If you look at these people, man, they're usually very isolated, lonely, disturbed people. What if the intervention is taking that guy out for a beer? I know that sounds unrealistic or something, right? Because
no, it's not at all unrealistic.
It's thinking outside the box.
Kevin,
so what if the intervention is more social than criminal or legal?
Yeah. And Kevin Briggs, I think his name is. He was a cop in San Francisco for a long time. He's that guy that stopped like 400 people from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, like literally 400 people
by talking to them.
And then he would say, like, once he would get them off the ledge, he'd be like, hey, if you want to fucking come down and hang out at the department or whatever, get coffee in the mornings, just let me know. That's what he did. And there's a lot of I've heard stories recently of police officers who deal with things on that level, like a guy, someone will commit some crime, whatever it is, like public drunkenness, right? Or a kid with weed or something. And the cop is like, it has the option to hammer them, or they have the option to fucking make their life better. You know what I mean? Which is, it's not just protect, it's protect and serve. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like you got to do both of those things. So I agree with you 100%. Now what that looks like.
Well, I know the answer is not to, the answer is there's no mechanism in place right now to intervene in what you think could be a disastrous situation without infringing upon somebody's rights, and that is never the option. Okay, I would take dangerous liberty over. Oh yeah, anytime, any fucking day, especially
as rare as it is. I mean, frankly, that might sound callous, but
no, it is. But it's extremely rare, though. I mean, like first of all, murder in general is fucking rare. There's not many people that have the propensity to commit murder, and if you look at all the ways you could possibly die in this country, being murdered, okay, is very low on the list, especially if you're not involved like in the drug trade or criminal gang activity or something like that, right? So random acts of violence, to die from that is extremely rare, and that needs you need to talk about that pragmatically. Of like, it's pretty uncommon. If you find yourself with a knife in your back, you probably had it fucking coming, and it's not.
Yeah, or it's a mental health situation, right?
Right.
I mean, but by and large, statistically, that is true, right? I mean, I would say the people who aren't suffering from mental health issues that commit murder are people in abject poverty, typically, or involved in some kind of violent trade. Yeah,
that's 100% true. If you don't involve yourself in that stuff, the odds of you being killed violently are pretty rare. Okay.
Yeah.
But as far as the intervention side, it is frustrating. Like the kid that shot up the Parkland High School, the guy had like 22 interactions or more with like the FBI and stuff. A lot of these mass shooters have had these things.
And then his mom had a fucking AR-15 in the safe that was open with this kid that had been having problems for a long time, right?
Yeah. I mean,
at every level of authority in this child's life, nobody took the opportunity to stop that. And it's, maybe people are dissonant, maybe they just don't believe like it can happen to them, or they couldn't, my kid would never do that, or it is rare. So a police officer maybe is like, well, the system's so large, I just feel overwhelmed. I don't know what it is.
Like I said, our side has always blamed mental health, and our side is always very quick to point out how law enforcement or how somebody dropped the ball and this happened, and it's not a gun issue. Somebody else dropped the ball, and we always look for somebody to blame. First thing we need to do is blame the individual, okay? Because it's the individual that committed these things. The other thing is to think outside the box. Like you don't need to necessarily. There's never a good opportunity. There's never a good reason to deprive somebody of their rights preemptively. That is a fucking horrible idea, and I do not trust the government to have a responsible mechanism to do that. But if you do have somebody that is displaying warning signs of about to do something or go off the farm, there might be other ways to intervene. Again, like, I mean, a big brother program, a mentor program, something. And while that sounds kind of cheesy, I think it's worth at least exploring the conversation of like, well, how do you look what all these guys have in common? They have fucked up relationships with their parents.
Yeah,
Their dad, their father, mostly. Yeah, there's no paternal or male role models in their fucking life
or there's quite a bit of abuse, but it's actually more common to not have an adult male authority figure in your life early than it is to be abused if you're a mass shooter.
That's exactly right. And you look at all of the other, and I'm telling you, these guys all have a lot in common. I think that these, if you were going to attempt a mechanism to try to intervene there, it would be social, and it would be a way to kind of engage this person.
So maybe that's what these new people that liberal cities want to hire onto police departments could do. Like, I don't want these people serving warrants for sure.
No,
like they're talking about these civil officers, civil affairs essentially, who are. Like, I don't want them showing up to domestic violence cases alone if they're not prepared to deal with actual violence, because violence is right there in the word, motherfucker. It's already been committed, or at least the threat of it exists. So don't send somebody that's untrained for it. Them making traffic stops, we see how dangerous a traffic stop can become, right? But in this situation, if a uniformed police officer wants to take this, person that's a police officer but not, a patrolman or whatever,
right,
to go hang out with this kid, talk to him, fucking figure out what's going on. Are you broke? Are you upset? Are you alone? What the fuck is happening here?
Yeah.
Right? But then, I mean, forcing the kid to do it is a violation of their Fourth Amendment right, technically, because you're asking them for information that you're not entitled to because they haven't committed a crime yet.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why I don't necessarily know that if that intervention should ever be on behalf of the state. It's if you're there are other organizations that are not necessarily an authoritative arm of the state that could potentially be there. And you're right, you can't compel somebody to talk to you. You can't compel somebody to go get a beer with you. You can't. I don't know what the answer is. The answer is not to preemptively deprive people of rights. But there's probably a creative way to intervene there that is not that. And I mean, that's where the conversation should at least start. How do you help somebody that's before they're unhelpable, before they've committed some act that there is no going back from?
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, suicide, and you look at things like that. I mean, there's hotlines and there's stuff. I mean, I don't know how effective any of this stuff is. I don't even know how effective some of the awareness campaigns and stuff are, man. I mean, I'm sure we both have lost a lot of friends to that. And you typically, in those cases, you don't see some of those coming.
No, especially in the military community, because we're used to hiding what's going on. You know what I mean? Because you got to get the job done. Like my knee is a little banged up, but I still got to go out there, because if I don't, and I'm a team leader, I lose my team leader spot. Then where do I go, right? I mean, it's weird. It's a weird situation. You also don't want to let your buddies down. So it's a problem for people like that. And to be honest, the thing I've seen that's most successful with suicide prevention is delaying it, right?
Yeah.
That's usually what happens, because it's typically a temporary valley, and suicide is a very permanent solution.
Sure.
You know what I mean? To that. And we've seen it quite a bit. More. I've lost more friends to suicide than combat. By far. It's not even close, actually.
Yeah. I mean, again, if somebody were serious about wanting to address reducing gun deaths across the board, you'd have to look at suicide. You have to look at poverty. You have to look at the actual causes of it. And I can tell you this, at no point in time is the cause the gun.
Yeah. Well, you could leave it out on your counter at night. I mean, mine's been sitting here this whole time and it hasn't done anything yet. We'll see. Maybe I should leave it here and put a GoPro on it, or a Ring camera, and just watch from home and record it for a full year.
That'd be a boring video.
See what happens. Yeah. It's an inanimate object. More people die from hammers every year than assault rifles, or actually rifles of any kind.
Rifles of any kind. Yeah. I've been in enough property rooms to tell you that assault rifles are maybe 1 out of 20 guns in that property room are going to be maybe. I mean,
well, no, 67 or 68% of murders are committed with handguns.
Handguns, yeah. And I'm saying, but whenever you look at the rifle murder statistics, specifically the rifle murder statistics, and you look at the rifles involved in those murders,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Very, 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 very rare Okay, is it a $2,000 Noveske rifle?
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, like
You fucking kidding me?
it's
Somebody's
not.
gonna spend $6,000 on a Cobalt Kinetics and then go shoot somebody with it. Give me a fucking break, man.
No, the rifles used in the rifle-related murders, man,
Yeah.
are like your Marlin 22s and shit.
Yeah.
And that's really what
Or some stupid shit that some knucklehead in West Virginia or South Central got a hold of. Typically,
Yeah.
just dumb shit. Anyways, we got to get going here. We got another show coming up, but thanks for joining us today.
Dude, it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. This is a really interesting conversation, and we'll bring you back here soon to discuss some other things.
Solid,
right,
man.
All right, thanks. We'll see you in hell.